In the capital of the kingdom of Gaul, the king and his court will be executed in public. The executioner snapped his fingers, and the guillotine immediately fell to kill the 97th, then the 98th, then the 99th. They believed that they could end the tyrannical regime from within, but in the end it was they who ended them. With the 100th one dead, the man called the citizens, saying that the king and his henchmen will no longer harm them. The era of oppression ends on that day, and instead, they give way to the era of liberation. A few shuffling footsteps walk along the platform, inciting the crowd to go crazy. They shout insults and ask for his immediate death. The king's first counselor, considers them idiots in search of violence. He was tied up and unable to do anything. But they don't even realize that they are being deceived by the same people who are behind the subjugation show. The Liberation Order is a group of aristocrats who supposedly fight for the people, but in reality, it was founded by Zack's family. They are the real tyrants who have been pulling the strings from the shadows for centuries. His next move is to make people believe that liberation is imminent, and use it as a pretext to massacre his enemies, once and for all. Addressing the village, the executioner says that it is the moment that everyone has been waiting for. Call the king and his advisors. Actually, the de Sax people don't care who serves as king, as long as it's a puppet they can control. They are accused of starving citizens to death and of aligning themselves with the demons who destroy their homes. In their thirst for power, the counselors are accused of sacrificing thousands of their brothers. They are told that the release order will not allow such things, and the crowd roars, who despises them, knowing that they invented the whole thing. The alleged clandestine meetings with the Demon King are the family's excuse to hand them over to the revolutionary mob. What they don't know is that they failed to capture his secret weapon. Worried and equally tied up, Elizabeth asks if he is sure that his ally will come, who has full faith that their 20-year-old friend was watching from the crowd. Annoyed by his mutterings, the executioner pulls his magic chains. Looking at the woman, the guard considers it a waste of such a delicious being. He holds her face and says that since he only has a few minutes left in the world, they can spend them together at the back of the platform. This causes Kim to stop and order him to take his hands off her. Ignoring him, the guard starts dragging her to enjoy herself a bit before she loses her mind. The king's advisor loses patience and begins to release his power in anger. As the soldiers try to take control of the situation, the explosion of their power sends a bunch of them flying backwards. The man who was harassing Elizabeth takes the brunt of it and starts to break down from within, just as the captive was starting to break free from his restraining spell. They get in formation and try to reinforce the spell. With this, King is forced to bow, subdued in an instant. He curses everything, unable to use his power as he likes. Surrounding him with guns, they tell him to stop squirming. However, the smile has not left his face, sure that their positions will be reversed in a moment. After all, the one who is going to save them will be there soon enough. The one she is waiting for is Asila's, her best friend, and the strongest ally they have. They met at the academy during the time when his powers had just awakened. His family was mercilessly murdered on the orders of the Disick family. At one point, they quickly became brothers in arms, each climbing the ranks of the nobility and striving to end tyranny from within. Unfortunately, they were betrayed, and he was arrested, together with his companions, but Silas was still free. The Order remains unaware of both their intentions and their awesome power. Who's next on the chopping block? Seeing him approaching, the executioner calls him one of the most devious accomplices of the king, the tyrant, who led the kingdom to ruin and ambrosia. A call. The council straightened up and took a step forward with its head held high. He made sure he was prepared, expecting his savior and best friend to arrive at any moment. The executioner asks the counselor if he has any last words to say. Who advises you not to be so confident, knowing exactly who is behind your order? When setting their trap, they made a mistake and failed to capture their strongest member, Silas. Repeating the name, the man began to take off his helmet and sent the captive into a state of shock and disbelief. The one he considered his brother and greatest ally was the one who betrayed them. He refused to believe it, saying that it can be anyone but him. After all, he is her best friend and the hope of the people. Under the deadly atmosphere, Silas tells him not to exaggerate too much. For all these years, he has been following his little plan, and has remained without being detected. To explain it in the least, he says that the Desaks were more convincing than he was. Kim asks how all this was possible. They have known each other for 20 years, and have come through thick and thin as true brothers, united by fate. Smiling, Silas asks her not to take it personally and says he should go back to work. He puts his helmet back on, and tells the guards to put him on the guillotine. As shocking as it is, who finally knows who betrayed them, and who will cause each of the executions of their comrades. Full of rage, he growls at his old friend, vowing to make him pay for their sins. The power springs from his body, manifesting as a demonic presence over him. Glaring furiously at his enemies, he uses his skill to eliminate some soldiers in an instant. They believe he has managed to break free from the spell, but they see the council charging at them like a beast, while his body was still bound. Quickly and easily disarming one of the targets, he catches the handle of a sword in the air, and holds it between his teeth. The flow of his energy wrapped around his body. Meanwhile, the soldiers do their best to subdue him, but Kim was already lost. Penetrating. In a nearby tower, the archers notch their boosted bows, in an attempt to kill him. Seeing this, he sends his power to take care of them from meters away. They are devoured and expelled from the tower, eliminated by the demonic prisoner. Other soldiers find their opportunity and work to reinforce the charm of restraint. He was surrounded, and being gradually pushed down by his magic, but nothing was strong enough to quell the rage at having been betrayed by his most trusted friend. Even Silo was getting tired of the games they were playing, so the two charged at each other, eager to finish things off once and for all. United as brothers, their fateful relationship worsened. King fell before he could even reach his target, and is forced to drop his sword. Meanwhile, the traitor stood tall, saying that one must do something himself, if he wants it to be done correctly. The bonds were tightened to the utmost, and there was nothing the captive could do. Grabbed by the neck, he is thrown into the guillotine, where the wood fits around his neck. Realizing that he is going to die, who wonders what he did to be betrayed like that? Silas assures his old friend that there was no great turning point, and that he was simply a pawn who outlived his usefulness. With a snap of his fingers, the guillotine fell, and the head of the council fell with it. While his consciousness was still intact, he closed his eyes, unable to accept that this is how things were going to end. The world was on fire. When he opened his eyes, he felt intense heat, and saw raging chaos that made him wonder if he was in hell. The idea of dedicating his life to liberating people from tyranny, and being sent to hell anyway, was ridiculous enough to make him laugh. His eyesight clears, and the scene becomes more apparent. As if struck by despair, he fell to his knees sadly, believing that he does not deserve any of this at all. Just then, he hears someone telling him not to lose his mind and take cover. The council recognizes his village and wonders if his hell is to relive its destruction. He even recognizes the armor of the invaders belonging to Count Rabble's army. A young man yells at him to run for his life. Who freezes at the sight of Gavin, a friend he hasn't seen in 20 years, since he was murdered during this very night. The friend ran to escape, telling him to follow him. However, he tripped over a corpse on the ground, and fell in the middle of the battlefield. This small mistake was going to end up killing him, costing him his chance to escape. A soldier raised his axe on the villager who dared to make an enemy of his count. Realizing that his friend was about to die again, Kim's body moved on its own, and jumped into action. He grabs a nearby shield from the ground, and arrives just in time to block the approaching heavy axe. The soldier is even more surprised when the fighter follows through with a kick to his side. On the other hand, the first council was stunned, and wondered why his attack was so weak. He couldn't even feel his powers surging inside him anymore. Praising the peasant's technique, the soldier stood in front of him, and in his armor, Kim saw the reflection of his face. His scar wasn't there, and he was young again, as if time had rewound. Gavin shouted at his motionless and distracted friend, telling him to run away from the enemy's blow. He was already too close to dodge, so he reacted instinctively, and grabbed the man's wrist instead. Because he was so strong and could barely be contained, The youngster now has to rely on technique to win. The enemy laughs at his weak attempt, but he increases the power and lowers his sword on the villager. As he was about to be cut into 2 pieces, Kim remembers that the armor he is wearing has a thin coating around the neck area. Spinning on his foot, he turns and lets go to dodge the sharp blade by inches. Retaining the skills he honed during 20 years of fighting, he knocks the sword out of the man's hands and quickly takes it for himself. With an experience that most of them can't even hope to have, he cuts the soldier's neck and immediately removes his head. With a technique his young self had never had before, Kim beheaded the enemy soldier. Delightfully surprised, David asks where he learned to do such a thing. The regressor turned to his old friend and experimentally held his face, confirming that it really is him. His strange and crazy behavior is dismissed as a side effect of the sock, but he knew deep down what had just happened. It is true that he has gone back in time 20 years, but how was that possible? He clearly remembers being on the guillotine and having his head cut off. Seeing him lost in his thoughts, David brings him back to reality with a firm slap and says that they have to go and save their families from the invaders. All around them, the Count's men were looting and burning down the whole village. He has returned specifically to the day when Rabel's army suppressed the revolt in his home. It's the day her friends and family died, and the horrific image was still vivid in her mind. Remembering this, they rushed to save their loved ones. It's still unclear why he's been brought back to this moment, but that doesn't matter right now. This time, Kim is not going to let the evildoers harm her family. Before his death, he was among the most powerful warriors of Gala, and one of the few who could challenge those of Sax. However, she is now back in her teenage body. His powers have not yet been awakened, and he has not yet enrolled in the academy. In other words, for now he is just a simple peasant. As he runs home, he sees a bolt of magic shoot through the air. Fortunately, he reacts fast enough and pulls Gavin back in time to save him. The lightning strikes the wall, and they take a look to see a noble. Sibold, the Count's son, was coming towards them and was full of power. A couple of civilians bowed down and begged him to spare their house, which was all they had. Smiling grimly, he calls them rats and sparks with magic. If they don't give him their house, then he might as well burn it down along with them. It releases a wave of energy that cuts the family and their home in half. Meanwhile, Kim cursed the scum, remembering that he also massacred his parents. That said, there's nothing he can do against the lesser nobles without their powers. The plan for now is to move quietly through the rooftops and reach their house undetected. This works and they get to his house fast, but they see the invaders already moving through the rubble. Since they were already there, a fight was basically inevitable. Gavin tries to stop him, wanting to ask for help first, but he doesn't have that much time before his home is decimated. Without any nobles, they were just ordinary foot soldiers of the Count's army. True, he does not have his powers, but his memories of 20 years on the battlefield are still intact. Encouraged by this great experience, he jumps into action and crashes into his house through the window. There, she immediately sees men already laying their hands on her family. Count 3 intruders in total. They see him and try to subdue him, but Kim has already got her hands on a couple of kitchen knives, saying that she would like to see them try. The veteran throws one at an enemy. The blade embeds itself into a man's neck before they can even react. Now alone, while the soldiers watch their comrade fall lifeless with a single blow, their enemy was already charging with deadly speed. They react and one manages to block with his sword in time. During this intense confrontation, Kim senses that the other intruder is coming from behind. A normal man would be helpless in this situation, especially since he cannot move forward or backward. That said, it can still go up. He jumps high into the air and dodges the blow of the sword, which instead hits the man's comrade. There was only one left, and it fell right behind him. All her life, she's dreamed of the things she could have done to her family's killers. Never in her wildest dreams did she think she would ever be able to see them alive again. As such, he shows her mercy. The man and kills him with the minimum of pain. Her home has been defended, and her family ran to hug their savior, who hugs them, saying that he missed them all these years. Confused by what he means, his father asks where he learned to fight like that, so he just promises to explain things later. For now, they have to go to the forest where it is safer. He remembers it well. The only survivors of that night were the people who fled into the forest and returned at dawn. They meet with Gavin, who was outside, and tell him to accompany them. Since their parents' house is on the edge of the forest, they are already safe. She also remembers this and how they survived while her son was dying. Determined to change that fate, Kim leads the group to safety. Many villagers lost their lives that day, killed by the Count's evil men. Now that he has a second chance, he has to use it well. They manage to regroup with the others and set up a camp for the night, telling them to stay there. He had intended to do something else. But suddenly he lost his strength. His vision became blurred, but he felt himself falling. While he was being called, the young man fainted from pushing his weak body to the limit. As soon as he closed his eyes, he dreamed about his tragic past and relived the nightmare. With his comrades tied up and watching, his best friend called him a pawn who outlived his usefulness. Just like that, the traitor beheaded him, as if they had not spent 20 years together. Finally and curiously, he hears Gavin's cries of pain, who wakes up to a warm sunlight on him. There was no longer any doubt about it, and he really went back 20 years. Regardless of the reason, he now has a huge advantage over his enemies. He is determined not to fail at any cost, but he still needs to awaken his power in order to succeed. Just then, he hears a deafening scream and runs as fast as possible to regroup with the villagers. Were they the guards? Instead of enemies, he sees Gavin, sad and kneeling on the ground. His father explains that the young man will need some time, since the soldiers killed his parents. Kim couldn't believe it, sure that his friend's mother and father survived in his previous life. Kim asks what happened, remembering how Gavin's parents lived by the forest. His father sighs and shares that Sebold was enraged after finding out that some of his men died. In other words, it was his fault for killing those soldiers. By saving his parents, he ended up orphaning the friend he loved so much. Similarly, on his knees, Kim looked to the sky, calling to the one who sent him there, asks if he was being punished, and if he was going to be tormented for eternity. His father comforts him, saying that he should not blame himself for what happened. All things considered, the real villains are the ones who cause violence and chaos. They told him that he saved Gavin and professes his pride for his son. The old man was right, and he could not continue to regret his fate. Having had a second chance, he must now use it to create a better future. To make the most of his advantage, he will have to start by awakening his powers once more. As long as he is weak, he will not be able to defeat a soldier, let alone change his fate. This time, he will protect whoever he can protect. Medi, his little sister, whom he abandoned in his previous life. After the death of his parents, he left the village bent on revenge. To follow her wishes, he left her in the care of Alder, the leader of his small village, and only later learned that he constantly mistreated her. When the opportunity came, he sold her to the Count's men, who then continued the abuse. She cried and called him helpless, but it was too much. In the end, he decided to end his lonely life, abandoned by the cruel world. The memory and regret still haunt him. This time, he hugs her tightly, vowing to never make the same mistake again. Just then, he freezes up and realizes what could have happened. He runs to Gavin and asks him where his sister, Hannah, is. Still grieving, she says that Alder is taking care of her now that her parents are gone. In saving Mary, he condemned his friend's sister just as happened to his parents. Trying to act fast, Kim tells him to take her away from the boss, as he cannot be trusted. The young man is confused and wonders why he would say that about the head of his village. Just then, a low voice spoke up asking what was going on. Alder came over and told them to give the mourning youth some space. The others don't know it yet, but the evil man was hiding his true colors. With a warm smile, the boss encourages Gabina to stay strong and promises to take care of Hannah. Ignorant of his true nature, the orphan boy couldn't be more grateful. Whoever turns away, because no one will believe him, no matter how much he insists. As he walks away to get some rest, the sun sets, and the moon rises over the forest. In his previous life, he went to the mountains alone after his parents were killed. By pure chance, he awakened the latent power in him a few weeks later. Now he knows how to trigger the awakening on his own, and he can do it in 2 days. He jumps from roof to roof, cursing Sigurd, who caused more damage this time than the last one. Fortunately for him, another rat needed his attention. He arrives at Alder's house and immediately hears a strange combination of crying and barking. Inside, a couple of rabid dogs were growling at Hannah, who was already beaten and turned upside down. She begged him to stay away, but the boss grabbed her by the hand and told her to enjoy it, since no one would come for her anyway. Whether in this life or the next, he truly is vermin from beginning to end. Seeing Kim, the old man asks what she was doing there. He was already ready to fight and threatened to kill him. Without wasting a moment, he orders the dogs to attack. This was a problem since he couldn't let them get close to Hannah, so the young man ran out of the room. As soon as they follow him, he turns and closes the door to keep them out. Alder looked at him furiously. Since his axe was going to be in his skull soon, he decided to tell her a little secret. The boss reveals that he conspired with the Count's men to kill his family so he could keep Medi. Since they did a terrible job, he'll have to do it himself. Kim is unfazed and just asks if he's finished talking yet. He was already aware of her plot with the Count, including the promise to make it noble later. Alder is surprised, not knowing who could have told the boy. Actually, he did. Just before he was disemboweled, King had already killed him before, when he found out what he did to Medi. And now he pulls out his swords, undeniably wanting to come back. He charged while the chief brandished his axe. Despite his age and size, he moved very fast, but his actions were too predictable, especially for a veteran like him. Given an opening, it was Kim's turn to attack. It cuts through the legs of the old man, who could not believe that the weak kid was hurting him. Coping with it, Alder calls it a fluke and swings back, but this attack is just as easy to dodge as the first one. The next cut runs down the boss's back, and now he was sweating with worry, wondering who could have taught him to fight like that. It's none of your business, and what you should be worried about is being cut into ribbons. Who was going to kill? But they tell him not to forget so quickly who among them is the master. Alder's body glowed and shot a wave of electricity that sent the young man flying. I couldn't believe it. But for some reason, his enemy was able to wield electricity. In his previous life, he was so strong that the boss couldn't even do anything to stop him. What he didn't know was that the Count not only promised to make him a noble man, he also helped Alder awaken his powers. Nobles are tyrants who exploit people for their own gain, allowing them to bathe in wealth. Their oppression is based on their mastery of a formidable power, which is to manipulate electricity. By creating and channeling electric currents, nobles can increase their speed, form defensive barriers, and even turn their opponents to ashes. This power was granted to them by God, who entrusted the nobles to protect humanity against the hordes of demons that arise from the southern lands to devour their people. At least, that's what the smug scum wants you to believe. The truth is that anyone can get this power as long as they take the so-called awakening pills. These are secret drugs invented by the nobles that grant those who ingest them the ability to manipulate electricity. Given this as part of his deal, Alder woke up and was now part of the best-kept secret of all the earth. Finally, he will be able to leave the village of Pazilga in the world in which they lived and join the ranks of the nobles, who makes fun of him, knowing that he will probably end up being a lackey doing dirty work. His words provoke the boss, who thinks that he is too loud for someone who is about to die. He fires another bolt of electricity, but the veteran hears him. He dodges perfectly, knowing that he probably can't even control his power yet. Winning is possible, but if he touches it, he will literally be cooked. As he bends down and thinks of a way to beat the opponent, he sees a metal reel nearby. It is a copper roll, which is ideal for conducting electricity. Kim takes the article. His plan is risky and could kill him, but he only has one chance to make it work. The enemy was getting faster, and he needed to think of a way to keep his distance. For a reason unknown to Alder, the young man spreads the copper wire all over the whole room and waits for his best shot, still hiding his secret weapon, who provokes the proud boss and mocks him for missing so much. This works on the foolishly arrogant man, who charges his fist with all his might and fires a huge blast of electricity forward, coinciding with perfect timing. The young man throws the reel upwards, intercepting the lightning and conducting all the electricity. His plan was working, and the cable was running through the power. Alder was surprised that his opponent had closed the gap without being hit. Every time he dodges, he turns the copper net, and each attack of his charges it. It was time for the final blow. Calling the end of the match, King digs his foot into the boss's stomach, sending him flying back, and straight into the copper net. The growing electricity travels throughout your body, cooking it from the inside out. Charred and steaming, Alder falls to the ground in disbelief, and asks how the boy possibly defeated him. It's amazing that he's still alive. Even for such a big bug, such strong electricity would normally kill whatever it touches. Seeing the young man take up his sword, the vile boss tries to come to an agreement. He promises to introduce him to the count, and even make him noble. Kim frowned at the man who had the gall to beg for mercy, after all the horror he inflicted on Medi. Alder was confused, knowing that he hadn't done anything to his sister. Again, he is cowardly scum, whether in this life or the previous, and even the next. Every time they cross paths, who will mercilessly destroy him, no matter that the old man's life ends with a meat cleaver deep in his head. With that settled, it was time to save Hannah, who had fainted from everything that happened. He carries her, promising to take her safe and sound from life. Back to Gavin. With a girl in his arms, he kicks open the bedroom door, and is greeted by the barking dogs he had locked up earlier. However, one deadly look from him is enough to silence the little pets. Making him heal, he walks away and enters the cold night. Back in the forest, the others were worried about the young man who had suddenly disappeared. Just then, they hear a knock and someone opening the door. Gavin runs to check on his friend, but is shocked to find his sister unconscious in his arms. Asked what happened, Kim reiterates that it was Alder. The cunning chief conspired with the count to storm the village and take his sisters. Hearing this, they worry that their friend has been followed there, but he assures them that Alder will not harm anyone again. Then, addressing everyone in the room, he says that there is something he needs to do. He can't tell you more, but he will be away for a few days, and you have to stay there. His father smiled warmly, saying that he wanted to support the son who saved him all. After all, Rabble's tyranny must be stopped once and for all. Taking his father's hand firmly, King says he will not let them down, and promises to save his people. Sure that his family was already proud of him, the regressor ventured on a journey alone. After a while walking, he almost reached his destination, and just needed to move a little further. In his old life, he fled the village after the death of his parents. Mad with pain and thirsty for revenge, he wandered the countryside for weeks, and found himself on the top of a mountain. He was taking shelter under a tree when it happened. A random lightning bolt fell, and hit him right in the chest. Like a real rod, the lightning always strikes that particular tree. Fortunately, a storm was approaching, and it will be the perfect time for him to activate his awakening by himself. There is nothing divine in the power that God gave to the nobles. Every human being has the potential to exercise electricity as long as he is able to unlock it. There is a region in the brain that, when activated, grants this ability. To unlock this easily, the nobles developed awakening pills, thus ensuring a constant flow of powerful users from generation to generation. However, this was not always the case. The first to discover this power was struck by lightning, which is a more effective method. Although it is more dangerous, it grants much more power than pills. Almost everyone who tries dies, which is why the noble studied and made the pills in the first place. In his previous life, King was accidentally struck by lightning and survived, and now he's going to do it again. Waiting for the coming storm. The next ray he releases will be just for him. The dark clouds were coming closer for seconds, and finally he saw what he was waiting for. A bright yellow flash. When the huge lightning struck as expected, the young man burst out laughing out loud, knowing that his path to revenge was mapped out. However, the lightning does not strike the tree, but the point a few centimeters from it, missed. Knowing that he won't get a second chance, King moved to chase the storm cloud that was now moving over the abyss. Determined, he jumped off the cliff, hoping that the rope wrapped around his waist would not break. It's as if he was being put to the test, and the gods wanted to see how far he would go to carry out his revenge. Just like that, his body rushed off the cliff. Fortunately, the lightning struck as he expected, hitting him right on the back as he fell. At the same time, power surged within him, causing his eyes to glow for a few moments. The electrocution causes him to pass out soon after, still fuming. The rope anchoring him to the top then began to move, and a huge flare of power erupted from the bottom. His hands clung to the edge, and whoever emerged, overflowing with power and the desire to make his enemies pay, finally has his power back. In his previous life, it took him years to develop mastery over electricity, as awakening one's potential was just the beginning. That said, things are different this time, and he has 20 long years of experience to ease the way forward, test his power, and break a rock. It's not over yet. The young man moves some fingers, forcing the pieces of stone to break from the inside. At least he knows his magic isn't bad at all. Now you have to check your speed. Planting his feet on the ground, he imbues them with electric charges and accelerated forward to cover a huge distance in an instant. At this rate, he was satisfied and found it acceptable. For the last part, he wonders if he can summon his avatar, who grits his teeth and gathers all his power, wishing for it to materialize. However, a pathetic wisp of energy appears over his head, making it clear that he still lacks the power for that. Avatars are possessed by truly great warriors and serve as a manifestation of the wearer's soul. An immense mastery of the electrical arts is the only thing that makes invocation possible. A single noble with an avatar can decimate entire regiments and destroy his enemies. Fortunately, the area he is in now gives him a lot of space to train and practice. To his surprise, a light voice suddenly called his name. It was Matey, who was hiding charmingly behind a tree. She decided to follow him, as he was being very mysterious at home. That said, it was his turn to ask questions, and he wonders when he became so strong. Seemingly trapped, Kim decides to tell him the future. They sit down for the conversation, and he frankly claims to be from the future. Without believing it, she scolds him for joking, and beats him as punishment. It's a natural response to such a ridiculous statement after all. Moving on to something else, the girl is excited that he has woken up as it changes everything. Now he has the opportunity to enter the academy, protect them from evil nobles, and earn a lot of money. Kim snaps at her little sister before she gets too far into it. It is true that he will protect them with his life, but he asks her to keep it a secret for now. Although he promises to explain it better later, she says goodbye to him and smiles, and says that she already trusts him with all her heart. Maddie then asks if the scar on his face is permanent, prompting him to look and get angry, because it appeared in exactly the same place as the last time. The brothers spend a long night training. With the sun on high later, Kim stood still with his eyes closed and his hands clasped. Receiving her signal, Maddie throws a bunch of rocks from a tree branch high up. Using the electromagnetic waves, he feels the projectiles, and with his legs loaded, he accelerated through the earth to snatch them all out of the air. Although he finishes in an instant, he only manages to get 14 out of 15 stones. She's impressed by how fast he's learning, and says it's like she's been using it all her life. Having said that, she asks him to help her get down from the tree, but he flatly refuses to stop, until she manages to take the 15 successfully. She throws the stones in anger, complaining that it has been 4 hours since they started. The young man continues and releases several power cuts. Her sister wants to finish when she hits 15, but suddenly increases the target by 1. After the death of Gavin's parents, he cursed the force that sent him back in time, feeling as if it was punishing him for some reason. However, the week he spent training with his sister, as intense as it has been a great source of joy for him. He gets to see her so happy and full of life, and at the end of the long days, he thinks to himself that it's the best thing that has happened to her in 20 years. His fateful encounter with Silas was going to happen sooner or later. For now, she has to deal with the Rabble family, or the tyrants who burned her village to the ground, mercilessly killed her parents, and caused her sister enough pain to end her life. In his previous life, he could never take revenge on them. When he mastered their powers, their high rank and nobility made it too dangerous to act against them. especially with the larger plan of overthrowing the regime. Now that you think about it, curse that miserable plan. Clasping his hands, he materializes a sword made of pure electricity and throws it flying through a tree. This time, he will not bother with subtleties. In the eastern province of the kingdom was the Rabble Castle. There, a lonely man was moving in the night, jumping over its walls. Shrouded in darkness and electricity, he sneaks around the area. The castle itself is heavily guarded by soldiers, but it's good that King can move at lightning speed, which they don't even notice. He hears a voice by the window, ordering someone to take the food to the nobles. The chef gives orders to his cooks, not wanting to be killed for serving cold food. The timing was perfect, and now the intruder just needs a noticeable distraction. Jumping a little more, he finds a group of guards, bored and barely awake. They complain of being conned by Alder, who allegedly promised them women. A man spoke up, reporting that someone killed his contact. The news stuns them, but one still has the audacity to care about the girls. They are the same scumbag who plans to rape Medi and Henna. Monsters like them deserve to be brutally punished. Granting the same, Kim cuts the head off the statue he was on and falls to crush the unsuspecting guard below. Although the other men are shocked, they still do not realize that it was an attack by an intruder, and think that it is an accident of a loose piece of the old castle. Not caring about their dead comrade, they head off to find a cleaner, with the soldiers out, who is free to travel further along a clear and undisturbed road. The castle is still a maze of rooms and towers, so you can't just go through them blindly. Wanting a better view of things, he heads to the top of a tall tower, climbing it easily with his feet and powers alone. Holding on to the rod at the top, he successfully finds the Count's quarters and jumps with fate. His plan is to start from the top and go down. Arriving at a guarded door, it is easy to conclude that the Count is on the other side. This time, the miserable man will pay for his sins and crimes. The soldiers saw him when he brazenly approached, but they were too slow, and Kim was already going to kill. Holding their metal helmets, he circulates electricity through them and electrocutes them from head to toe. Since they won't need their swords anymore, he takes one for himself and kicks the door open. Breaking into the house of the Count and his family, he interrupts their dinner, saying that it is time to pay the price for his misdeeds. Rabble looks nonchalantly at the uninvited guest, while Sigil drinks and brags about being right. As he said, the man who killed Alder would surely come for them later. The Count was still skeptical, not believing that such a brat could have killed the village chief, unless he stole the fake noble's awakening pills. Calling the young man, he condescendingly asks if he feels a little more powerful than usual. His belittling words reminded her who the reality. The nobles only acted with contempt towards the commoners, and there were no exceptions. For them, it's no more threatening than a fly, but it's time to change all that. He confesses to killing Alder, the traitor who was helped to plan the attack on his village. With his confirmation, Sibold asks for the 100 gold he bet with his father. Rabble yawned, completely unconcerned about everything. He assumed that the pathetic chief was killed due to a pathetic quarrel, believing that the savages of the village would kill each other for a piece of meat. Just then, a wave of energy cut off the food in his cutlery. The Count is asked if he knows what a pig with a belly is. It is the nickname that the nobles of the capital have given him. In King's previous life, he spent a lot of time around the high nobility, and one of his favorite pastimes was making fun of provincial nobles. Rabble was no exception, of course. No longer indifferent, the Count feels insulted by his impossible words. Count and Countess Rabble, also known as the pig with a belly, and his ugly wife, are all peasants for someone superior. Attracted by the wave of insults, the lady breaks her chalice of anger. She fires a burst of electricity to burn the intruder to a crisp. When the smoke cleared, they saw the young man standing there completely unharmed. He asks if that's all the ugly cell was capable of. She couldn't believe he was still alive, but since he is, she's eager to find out if he can withstand a full-powered attack. Before she could attack again, her own red energy whip hit her. The meager attack baffles her at first, but the woman's body suddenly shakes and trembles as she loses control of her power. Clumsy carriers like her cannot channel power safely, a usual mark of an untrained beginner. Rabble gets worried and calls his wife. However, all it takes is a little spark from King. With her trigger, the unstable power inside her explodes while she is still in the air. Her family screamed as they watched her get tackled and fall lifeless to the ground with a loud bang. The intruder comforts the Count, promising that he will make him join her very soon. Unwilling to let that happen so easily, Sybil blocks his attack with his bare hands, allowing his father to surround him from behind. The center of the room explodes from his power, but Kim manages to back up in time before it hits him. They walk towards the servant who dared to attack a noble. As punishment for his crimes, they will make sure to eliminate him, and then move on to raise up their village. Smiling at their threats, the young man tells the pigs to listen, and says that the wolf has come to hunt them. Sebald moves first, anxious for avenging his dead mother, but his attack was very slow compared to Kim. It was child's play to avoid such meager and clumsy attacks. They may have woken up, but it's all because of the pills, and nothing compared to their lightning-charged strength. That said, facing two at the same time makes it dangerous, since he has to keep paying attention to the other. The Count attacks the moment he dodges to avoid the blows of the sun. Rabble forces an opening for them and urges Sibolda to take the opportunity to attack. Ready to finish, 15 stops between his overloaded fists. He unleashes his own power and catches every blow with his own hands. A quick kick in the stomach gets the Count out of the commission. As for the son, he has terrorized his village for too long. The pathetic nobles called themselves God's chosen warriors. Now is the time to wash away all your sins. Still holding Sibyl's hand, he blows up the young noble. Rabble screamed when he saw another member of his family die. Enraged, he gathered all the energy in his body and unleashed it on the brat, terrorizing his home. However, he fell to the ground upon seeing him standing and injured after receiving all of his strength. Finally, in fear, he asks who this man is, who calls himself a simple peasant who is nobody, and who suffered his cruelty all his life. As such, he has decided that enough is enough, and it was time to end his tyranny. Rabble finally realizes that he must have obtained his powers from the beam itself. Kneeling down without hope, the Count accuses him of taking everything from him, but who clarifies things and says that he has simply cleaned up Isilga. They call him a reckless fool for defying the nobles. By killing the Count, he will sign his own death warrant and be persecuted by the rest. The young man looks at him well. The pendant on her neck is a symbol of her nobility. Who snatches it, not wanting to be scared by some cheap trinkets. Rabble screams, saying that a peasant like him is not even worthy to touch him. Once he's dead, the nobles themselves will track down the killer. They tell him not to be so sure about that. The one who looks at his reflection in the pendant, declaring that he will be the one to marry this time, squeezes his sword tightly and cuts the Count's neck. Inside the castle, Rabble, who is snooping around with one goal in mind, which is to get arcanite. It is known that it is the most expensive mineral in the world, used by the nobles to create their riches. It allows them to amplify their electrical powers. However, given its price, only the nobles of the capital own it in large quantities. Remembering that Count Rabble used to boast of having it on his lands, he thinks that the man must have it, accumulated in his personal camera. With that in mind, he runs to his camera and finds a treasure box. He opens it using his power, and is frustrated to find only a small portion of the mineral. He curses the Count for deceiving him, as he hoped to find enough to make a weapon. He needs more than the splinter for his plans. With the Rabbles gone, the villagers have nothing to fear, and it will take time for the nobles to replace the Count. And with the chaos she's planning in the capital, they'll have far more pressing concerns than governing a distant province, which means their family will be safe. While he is enrolled in the academy, he smiles at the thought, glad that he can keep his family safe. She can't wait to tell them that she has already awakened her powers, and to see the expression on their faces. He smiles sentimentally again, remembering that in his previous life, he came down from the mountain half dead. That day, he thought he had simply been electrocuted. Injured and dizzy, he managed to crawl back to the village before collapsing in a daze and confusion. The villagers came to his aid, worried about what had happened to him. He assured them that he was fine, and that he was just exhausted. But suddenly he created his first electric spark. The current ran through his body, sending jolts of tension. He was as surprised as the villagers when they saw the spark on his fingertips. The whole village celebrated and carried him on their shoulders and shouted his name. They were full of laughter and happiness. They are so glad that the boy finally woke up his power. For the villagers, he was the beacon of hope for a better life, a noble who was going to appeal for the good of the village. Thanks to him, they would finally have enough resources and would be protected against the local lords. At present, now that his power has awakened again, he wonders how they will react this time. However, he suddenly realizes something. Feeling the fear slowly sinking in, he looks around the village and discovers that it is completely deserted with deafening silence. He trembles with fear, thinking that his people were attacked once again by the enemies. He runs like lightning towards his house, completely worried about his sister and his family. Break into his house like a madman, with his heart beating with fear inside his chest. To his horror, his house is empty, but he can't find any signs of struggle. Starting to go crazy, he frantically searches for everyone. Just as he's about to collapse, he hears a loud bang, followed by deafening cheers. It turns out that the villagers prepared a surprise for him. Everyone celebrates the fact that he awakened his power that will grant him nobility. His family is very proud of him, especially his sister, Mary. He throws her an annoyed look since she promised him that she would not tell anyone about her awakening. She gives him a shy smile and tells him that she only told 1 or 2 people, but by mistake it spread to everyone. The kids crowd around him and tease him with their power, asking questions, and if he can move super fast like lightning. It's like they don't run out of questions, asking if he can jump really high, split a mountain in 2 or fly into the sun, and come back. Super excited, the kids ask him to show them what he can do. The young man sighs at his innocent persistence, but feels shy about showing his power. They continue to ask him, and even adults begin to intervene, begging him to show them even a spark to quench their curiosity and anticipation. After some prodding, he finally relents and decides to show them some party tricks that they won't be overwhelmed by his true power. Then he activates his electricity, and his fingers begin to release energy rays. Then he creates an image of a horse from the lightning, making the villagers surprised and open their mouths in amazement. Everyone chants his name, praising him, and telling him how amazing he is in their eyes. He is her hope and her dreams now. Just then, a mysterious presence honors their village. He is looking for Kim, who is the only person awake in the domain of his village. The man keeps himself so dignified, with a wolf skin covering his head, and his body covered with war scars. Who is surprised to see the man named King Zak, who is the leader of the Silver Wolves. The man heard rumors that Alder, who was once a silver wolf, had died. With an intimidating aura and a thunderous voice, he claims that it is his responsibility to defend the honor of his mercenary band by taking the head of the one who killed him. He then looks directly at Kim and confirms that the boy was the one who sent Alder. Kim does not deny the fact and claims that Alder deserved his fate and to be killed. The old man agrees with him and confirms that Alder is not a nice person and is just unpleasant. He recognizes that the boy is right to kill the vile leader of the village, but the mercenary code is sacred, and he has to fulfill it, and he must avenge his comrade. To prove his point, he immediately throws his sword at the boy. Kim is almost injured and manages to dodge the attack at the last minute. Then he is surprised to see that Resik's sword is adorned with a shiny little arcanum. The gem on the hilt is what gives the sword an extra amount of power. The old man smiles. Seeing his reaction to the sword, Resik brags about it, pointing out that his sword is an extraordinary blade. He hits the gem with his fist hard and challenges the boy to a duel to the death. Worried about his friend, David grabs a pitchfork and enters, expressing that he will help his friend flee for his safety. However, Kim is confident that he can fight the old man to the death. After all, he can handle the power of electricity and has a clear advantage over the leader of the Silver Wolves. He then grabs the gallows, planning to use it against his opponent. Seeing his determination to fight, David calls him crazy for throwing himself into the wolf's lair. He assures his friend that he can handle the fight, and besides, he can use this opportunity to measure power. The power of an arcane sword. He smiles confidently and accepts Rezak's challenge. Not wanting to endanger the villagers, he tells the old man that they should take their fight outside the village. However, the old man claims that it won't matter as their fight will be over in an instant. The old man swings his sword at him, and immediately blocks the attack with his own weapon, frustrated because he can't use his power. Since they are in the middle of the villagers, he cannot risk injuring them, so he can only engage in sword fighting. To protect them and take the lead, he tells them to back off. Then he charges at his opponent to shorten the distance. Sensing his hesitation, Requisite can tell that he is worried that his friends will be electrocuted. He squeezes his gun. The old man clearly knows what he is doing, and based on how he reacts, it shows that he has fought nobles before. They charge towards each other. Even if he can't use his electricity power as he pleases, he can blindly imbue the spikes of the gallows with electricity beams to stop the hangover attacks. Their weapons collide, and the old man is impressed at how he keeps up with them. He swings his gun at the old man once more and tries to read his movements. He makes another move and lunges at the man. After cutting the distance, he launches his orca charged with electricity in the direction. Requisite is unfazed by his action. However, he's not finished yet, and he's still hiding a trick up his sleeve. Since he can't use his lightning speed with the villagers nearby, he used the pitchfork to control his speed, and creates another attack towards Requisite, surprising him with his unpredictable movement. Seeing the opportunity to have an advantage, he attacks his back since it is the vulnerable part. He lunges at the man, his gun charged with bolts of electricity. However, to his total surprise, his attack bounces off and doesn't even disturb the old man. He recognizes that his opponent is cunning and capable, but he also has some tricks that he is hiding up his sleeve. Then he takes off the fur coat that covers his body, and Kim is surprised to see that underneath there is a full Arcanito armor, which protects the man from any attack. Seeing his surprised reaction, Requisite introduces himself again, mentioning to him that he is also known as the Noble Killer. Turned on, the Noble Killer is determined to show him the true power of the Arcanum. He then slams his fist back into the gem, revealing that with a little stimulation, the electricity stored in the Arcanum is released. So he slams his fist into his sword one more time, and does the same with his shield, activating them. He imagines that the boy is surprised that he has a weapon and armor that only nobles could get. He reveals that he stole all of them from Salkin de Rabble, and that once he's done with the boy, he'll end up with Rabble next. Overwhelmed with power, he promises to do it quickly, so that King ends his life with torture. The kid will be number 6 on your list, Deadbeam Weirdos. The two collide again, and instead of focusing on the fight, he is worried about everyone's safety. Because of this, he is restricted and cannot use the full extent of his powers without the fear of endangering everyone. He ponders deeply, thinking of a better way to fight the old man, and looking for a way to turn his own power against him. Who clenches his teeth, upset because he has no control over the Arcanites. The mineral is considered the most valuable in the world, highly sought after for its unique ability to store and catalyze electricity. With remarkable efficiency, nobles often covet it, using it to forge weapons that enhance electricity and greatly amplify their combat capabilities. Normally, those without the gift of electricity avoid using it altogether because the mineral is extremely volatile and notoriously difficult to control. If the capacity of the Arcanum is exceeded, it can become overloaded and explode with devastating force. Anyone without the ability to operate it or unable to properly channel their electricity risks their own life simply to possess it. In the case of a hangover, his little Arcanum probably contains only a meager electrical charge. The old man praises his skill and adds that he lasts longer than the vassal of the count he killed before. With this, he throws himself back in the direction of his opponent. Requisite asks if he has heard of a Lyle man and mentions that he murdered the man after annihilating his entire family. He dodges the old man's attack once more as he thinks of a way to overload his little Arcanum. He listens as his opponent shares his abhorrence against the nobles who want to wipe them off the face of the earth. He continues to evade their continuous attacks that are full of contempt and disgust. Hangover marks his awakening as noble as a signal to end his life as well. There will be no exception to his hatred, aiming to wipe out all the nobles, to execute his plan of revenge for life. The old man swings his sword with a lot of power, wanting to split his opponent in half. Kim sees an opening where his attack could connect, but he has to give everything to win the fight. Requisite laughs with excitement. He is impressed with his opponent, and how he put up a good fight against him, holding out much longer. than the spineless male he fought and killed. However, this won't last anyway, as she is planning to finish off the guy now. With this statement, he activates the electricity in his arcane-adorned blade and swings it in his direction. Kim blocks his attack and tries to prevent him from connecting using his bare hands. The man laughs at the absurdity of his move, as he should have stuck to dodging. Kim keeps his hands on his opponent's blade, intercepting it so that it does not hurt him. Then he calmly tells his opponent that the fight is over. With fiery determination, the enemy in front of him might be stronger than him, but he is more skilled, and he is still not running out of tricks. He then reveals that he simply pumps the sum of his power into the old man's blade. As if it were a sign, Arcanito's sword glows under his touch and Risak screams in great pain. A damaging explosion follows which injures the old man on the spot. Risak is electrocuted with an inexplicable amount of lightning that travels through his body. He drops his sword to the ground and loses consciousness in the middle of the fight. While observing his enemy's current state, Kim thought that the charge he transferred to Arcanito's sword was too much for Risak to handle, as it looks like he ruined it. He sighs, thinking that one would need years of training to teach his body to cope with such an insane amount of electricity. Seeing him win the fight, his family and villagers rush to his side to check on him. He assures them that he is fine. Rezek acknowledges his defeat and asks the young man how he was able to beat him. Quinn claims he simply used the power of Rezak's gun on him. The old man is surprised by this trick, but accepts his fate anyway, and adds that he is at least grateful that a noble like Quinn was the one who defeated him. Accepting his fate, he tells the boy to finish him off once and for all, giving up his life. However, King refuses to take her life, much to her frustration. She cannot accept that the guy denies her an honorable death, insisting that he likes to abide by the mercenary code to the end. Kim explains that he is not a mercenary, and that she cannot force him to follow the mercenary code. Smiling, he adds that he only follows the code of the protectors, and, according to which, once an opponent is defeated, he will become a vassal of the victor. Seeing the look of surprise and confusion on the man's face, who clarifies that he wants Rishuk, who is hailed as the noble killer and leader of the Silver Wolves, to serve him after his defeat. The old man is stunned by his statement, but make it clear that it will be beneficial for both of you since you share the same desire. With fire in his eyes, he reveals that he also aims to wipe out the nobles. Since Risak is a skilled swordsman, you can make him the protector of your village. He names the Silver Wolves as the protectors of his family and friends, while he travels to the capital and makes preparations to send the nobles to hell. Rezek takes a moment to process what he has just heard, but finally relents. He promises that as long as he breathes, he will keep the village safe from those who try to hurt everyone who is dear to him. After hearing his approval, he tells the old man to hand over his sword, as he needs the Arcanite to give himself a boost. After taking the sword from him, he used the Arcanite to forge a new blade. While forming the new leaf, he infuses it with enhanced magical properties, making sure it has strong electric magic. After using his blacksmith skills, he finally created a new curved sword. In the future, the nobility will switch to using this type of weapon that has proven to be better than a normal sword. He will use this knowledge as an advantage against his enemies. After all his preparations, he wraps up his sword and ties it to his back. Entrusting the safety of his village to Rezek, he says goodbye to everyone as he begins his journey to the capital, promising to return as soon as he can. Now, he will face reality and the fate that awaits him. In his previous life, he will enroll in the academy after leaving his hometown and putting his plans into action. He'll have to do it again. Only this time, he already has the advantage of having mastered his powers. He has to get ready, because it is the place where he will meet his comrades and the man who thought he was a brother to him, but who will later betray him, Silas. On a sunny day, a boat glides through the sea. Inside is King, who hopes to arrive in Lutetia soon. He smiles, thinking that once the ship docks at the port, he will report to the authorities. It is a prerequisite that newly awakened nobles have to declare themselves to enroll in the academy. There, different nobles from different walks of life will have the opportunity to enroll in the most prestigious academy for the newly awakened. They will almost never realize that their power is not a divine gift, but simply a stroke of luck. They were all struck by lightning that some of them wouldn't even remember because of the trauma it brought. They wake up thinking that they have been chosen by the divinity. Back on the boat, a crewman announces that dinner is ready. Kim contemplates using her time on the sea voyage to practice her sword skills and relax before enroll in the academy and become a student again. At that moment, a woman in a cape begins to get dizzy and collides with him. He offers to help her, but is surprised to see that she is his sister after all. Medi takes off her cape and declares that she will join him in the capital. He immediately rejects her idea and tells her that she needs to get on the next boat bound for his village. Thinking about how risky her decision to join him is, witnessing how worried her brother can be, she assures him that he will not do anything reckless. She has decided, and she will not just sit and rot in the village. Kim's face turns serious as she notices that her insistence on coming with him is crazy. This will be dangerous for her, and he will not subject her to anything that will cause her harm. She doesn't back down. In fact, he even interrogates his brother because in the span of one day, his swordsmanship improved tremendously. And not only that, it also manipulates electricity as if it had been doing it for years. The change in his power has made him very selfish, and his sister may feel that he is hiding something. He sighs and tells her his story, that he came from the future again. Exasperated by his made-up stories, she interrupts him upset because he is treating her situation as a joke. She thinks that when she fell off her horse and landed on her head, this ruined her memories. This also explains the change in his personality and all the incoherent messes. Kim mentions that her parents would never let her join him on his trip to the city. She counters this by showing him the letter her mother wrote, saying that she allowed Medi to join him. In return, he needs to take care of her, while she fulfills her dream of seeing and living in the capital. In short, he needs to take care of her, while she is under his care. Having no other choice, he simply pays attention to his mother's words and follows his sister, who is now excited about dinner. In the ship's dining room, who watches his sister fondly. Medi is the kind of person who always knew what he wants in life. In this version of her life, he successfully protected her from tragedy and saved her from Alder. He promises himself that he will protect her from harm now that they will explore the capital together. At that moment, a group of knights enters the ship, announcing that they are in search of a noble killer. Revealing that Count Rabble was murdered, they will award 10 gold pieces to anyone who comes forward with the information. Medi is shocked and nervous about the turn of events, knowing that her brother is the one who is involved in this. A gentleman approaches them and asks the reason for traveling to the capital, doubting if they are fleeing. Who flatly denies this and comes up with an excuse that they are a married couple on their honeymoon, making Mary gasp in surprise. The gentleman becomes suspicious as he looks nervous and points out that the count was killed by a man wielding electricity. When he is about to ask if he is just woken up, the ship suddenly stops, followed by a loud and hard impact. That causes some barrels to fall inside the ship. They are in a dilemma after a rock wall appears and collides with the ship. The crew frantically prepares the harpoon to send the monster back. Kim warns them about her tail. As if on cue, the rorqual flaps its tail at the man, easily destroying the harpoon. The gentlemen also start to panic, not knowing how to deal with the problem. Kim realizes that the creature is aggressive after they strayed into her territory. Normally, an electric lightning would be enough to scare him. However, he has to be careful when using his powers around soldiers, especially since they are suspicious of him. If they find out that he has recently woken up, he will be their main suspect. With this, he has to rely solely on his combat skills and reflexes. Then he grabs a rope and slides down the boat. He draws his sword, thinking to scare him away with a single blow. Jumping on the target, he swings his sword, giving him a cut with his sword. She is surprised that her skin is rock solid. It bounces because of its impact. Medi immediately runs to her side and checks if she is okay. Seeing that it seems useless, the gentlemen steal the only lifeboat and assemble it themselves. Once a rorqual decides on an enemy, it will not stop attacking until it is destroyed. The aquatic beast crashes its huge and scaly body against the boat, wanting to split it in two. If this continues, the ship will be reduced to wreckage. Floating in a short time, as he has no other choice, who immerses himself in water where no one can see him using his powers. Then wait for the whale to approach. He clenches his sword and anticipates the beast coming his way. He produces lightning in his hand and hits the aquatic beast with it, electrocuting it until it swims away. Then he comes to the surface of the water, thinking that the roar will vent to another victim since he is proud. Meanwhile, the three gentlemen are paddling frantically away from the boat. To his utter horror, the aquatic beast appears near his boat, looking angrier than before. He then unleashed his frustration on them, destroying the boat in one fell swoop. Meanwhile, back on the boat, Mary throws a rope to her brother to help him get back on deck. Landing on the deck, he is relieved that the ship is still in one piece. Medi suddenly hugs him, grateful that her brother is safe. The crew is also celebrating gratefully for saving his life. They throw it in the air, cheering as they go. Later, who feels lethargic after being thrown into the air for how many times a while ago. The captain of the ship declares that they are about to dock in Lutetia in a few hours. Meanwhile, King hopes to meet the nobles of the earth and thinks about his reunion with Silas. King looks calm and sound asleep on the deck. However, his dream is far from it, as he dreams about his past with Silas, calling himself brother and making promises that nothing will ever separate him, until his best friend betrayed him and simply used him to advance his plans. Quinn wakes up from her nightmare. He is soaked in sweat and shaken by bad memories. Later, they finally reach the capital of the Kingdom of Gaul. Medi is amazed at how tall the buildings are. You can't help but look at the spectacle that the city offers. Meanwhile, as he had lived there in his previous life, Kim is not as impressed as his sister, and is just trying to remember what it was like. They disembark from the ship, and Mary can't help her excitement as she walks through the city for the first time in his life. They arrive at the hotel they are staying at, and Kim instructs her sister to book a room for one night. He leaves first as he needs to inform the local authorities of his presence as a newly awakened to enroll in the academy. He is about to leave when Medi reminds him of the payment they should make to he gives her the gold coins the guards left on the ship, as it looks like they won't need them anymore. Maddie screams with joy, saying that they are rich now and that they could buy an entire street if they wanted to. Kim quietly recalls that the prices in Lutetia are high and that the gold coins they have will barely cover a few nights. He goes to inform the authorities and reminds his sister not to cause trouble while he is away. She smiles at him, assuring him that she will only spend her money on essential things. Kim just shakes her head, knowing that wouldn't be entirely true. The chosen one is what they call those who were accepted into the academy. However, getting in is not so easy. Every day, hordes of people show up, they're claiming that they have woken up. The guard calls the next one in line and instructs the man to demonstrate his power. Nervous, the man tries to concentrate and focus to show his power. He swears that when he woke up that morning, he felt strangely optimistic. Then he produces a lightning bolt in his hands. However, the guards suddenly appear and reveal that they know he is cheating. They roll up his sleeve and find the device with an arcanite gem that he is using to produce lightning. The guards beat him as punishment for his cheating. Unfortunately for the guy, he didn't manage to fool the guards. If one passes the test, he can apply for a cash reward, and this rule attracts scammers. After passing the exam and taking the reward money, criminals usually return to their holes and hide forever. The guard calls the next person in line, who is Kim. The man warns him not to deceive them for their own sake. Wasting no time, Kim shows her power and conjures a skull with her rays. The guard is stunned by his power and claims that he is truly a chosen one. He is instructed to continue down the hall to finalize his admission to the academy. He passes his data to the guard and thinks it's easier than he thought, and they didn't even ask him how he got his powers. He walks down the aisle that is so familiar to him. He looks at the other end, and there he sees someone he hates so much that he drops his form and can barely breathe. Silas picks up his form and reads his name out loud, as if memorizing it. He hands her the form with a smile and says that he is also new. He can't help but boil with rage as his treacherous best friend is in front of him. He remembers how he lost his life because of him and contemplates killing him on the spot. He squeezes her hand, trying to hold back. Feeling the tension, Silas asks if something is wrong with him. Kim says no, so Silas assumes that he is only tired due to his awakening and suggests that he rest. Then he says goodbye and wishes her all the best. However, seeing him so relaxed and smiling somehow provokes him even more, and this makes him lose all his restraint. He releases the electric rays in his body and grabs his sword, lashing out at Silas. Enraged, he swings his sword at the man with all his strength. Just in time, Silas manages to draw his sword and block his attack. Suddenly, someone comes between them and separates them. The old man praises them for being awesome, stating that it's good that they are eager to try out their new powers. The old man named Tapio, a teacher, is very proud, noticing that the sound of clashing swords will unite men faster. He introduces himself and claims that he specializes in the art of combat. He assures them that they will have a lot of time to train during training, so they need to slow down first. Kim recognizes the man who is known to be the most powerful warrior in the capital. He is the key figure of the liberation of the Order, which was the group that will kill him in 20 years. Silas smiles and apologizes to the teacher. He points out that they have just awakened their powers, so keeping them under control is not easy. So he extends his hand over here. Kin and apologizes if he somehow offended him, hoping to cross swords with him in the future. Kin accepts his hand, thinking that he is already more powerful than he expected. However, this will not prevent him from killing the traitor. Before that, he tells himself that he has to control himself, or his life will end like the first time. Besides, Silas owes her an answer as to why she betrayed him. Meanwhile, a man from another room is watching the two new students, thinking that there is great potential in them. So they must prove their loyalty immediately. However, he is not sure if they can survive what is coming at them. First day of school, students are busy chatting and making friends. Meanwhile, Kim walks down the hallway remembering how she trained her body for an intense study. Although his strength is not as it was before, he is still much stronger than any newly awakened one. He must keep his power hidden in order to avoid unwanted attentions. No one can know how powerful he is. At the martial arts class, Professor Tavio introduces himself as their new instructor. He talks to his class about needing to check their combat skills and points out that some of them are already skilled fighters. One of the students immediately volunteers to start the training. He recalls how one of the students died during training, overwhelmed by a strong surge of lightning that passed through his body. Lightning does not spare anyone and strikes children, adults, and even the elderly. Every year, dozens of the newly awakened enroll in the academy to truly master the power they have gained. After explaining the rules, Tapio declares that the lesson will start now. He then points to Kim and asks her name. The boy introduces himself and claims that he is from the Eastern Province. The professor smiles at him, remembering that he was the one who was so eager to test his strength before. She likes the fighting spirit of the guy, so she knows that he is the right partner to choose for Tari. He then calls his partner, Owen D. Zach. The man looks proud and threatening. Thousands of electric rays almost palpable in the air with his presence. He is the eldest among Zachs, and they are descendants of the first awakened tyrants who ruled the earth from the shadows. They are the men who killed him, and he hates them with every fiber of his being. And with his power now, he can't stand a chance against Erwin. So you need to keep calm and avoid reckless risks. Admit to the professor that he can be impulsive sometimes and tells him that he will lose a fight against Erwin. This makes the professor laugh, pointing out that he has become reasonable now that he is facing a formidable enemy. Fabio then asks Erwin if any of the newcomers catch his eye, and the prince says that not a single one has managed to arouse his interest. He shakes his head, stating that this year's batch is unfortunately weak, and that one of them is so old that it is compared to a fossil. He then points to the guy and orders the guards to bring the old man to him. The man is dragged forward. Kin is shocked by the twist. Dodging the fight, he has thrown the old man under the cart, and severely. Erwin will crush him. Tabio laughs at the situation, clearly mocking the old man. He declares that at their signal, they need to unleash their lightning against their enemy. He reminds them not to paralyze their opponent, but also tells them not to hold back. Who clenches his fist, pointing out that most of the newly awakened can't even focus electricity well enough to kill. However, for the noble lineages, it's a completely different story. Their powers bloom early, and by adulthood, they are already fierce warriors. In front of his opponent, Erwin tells the man to get ready. pointing out that weaklings do not last long in the academy. Knowing that the old man will surely die, Kim can't just stand by, saying that he should do something. Moving recklessly, he throws himself into the fight and tries to stop it, countering Erwin's attack. The prince smiles, excited by his unexpected move. Fabio applauds, impressed that the student is brave enough to insert himself into the duel. Although he is brave, they still fail to meet Erwin's attack with one of their own, even though Erwin only used a fraction of his power. With this, Kim can only join Group D. If he works hard, then he could be promoted. This does not help Kim, as Group D is the weakest of the awakened ones. Instead of getting discouraged, he's pretty happy that he hasn't been bothered by Zax or his cronies. Just then, a classmate of Erwin intervenes, angry that Kim insults him by interrupting their duel. He suggests that Kim be punished for interrupting their duel. Erwin smiles, saying that a fly cannot insult a man's honor, and that a lion like him does not care about the affairs of insects. The next day, in the banquet hall of the academy, while bringing his food to the table, he notices that the old man is sitting alone, and no one wants to sit with him, rejected by what happened in the duel. In his past life, he was also obsessed with power. He met Silas, and together they lived and breathed to earn a place in the Alpha Group. Together, they were unstoppable. Since Group A was reserved for the noble offspring from birth, they trained brutally until they finally managed to enter Group. And that gave them a ticket to the noble elite, and their first step to take it down from the inside. This time, he will keep his distance from the elites, and simply become an outcast. He sits opposite the old man, and greets him, introducing himself. Ask for the man's name as he didn't hear it before. The old man apologizes to him, and mentions that he has taken a vow of silence, but as the one who saved his life, he will break it for him. Then he tells Kim that his name is Sin, and now he will return to his vow. It seems strange to Kim, but having an old mute friend at the academy might be the best thing she could have hoped for. It can be easily integrated into the background, and no one will notice it while executing your plan. He plans to gather as much information as possible about the Desic and their allies, and the fact that he is an outcast ensures that no one will bother him while he gathers his information. Meanwhile, in the background, someone from the cafeteria is circling around to offer the students seconds. The woman offers Kim seconds, and is surprised to see her sister in the cafeteria uniform. He takes her by the hand and drags her to a corner, demanding why she is working at the academy. She tells him that someone has to work to earn money because the prices in Utisha are high. He shakes his head in frustration and tells her to get a job somewhere else. Just then, I know he shows up, misinterpreting the commotion as if Kim is stalking the maid. With his chains wrapped around him, he approaches Kim with an intimidating aura, promising to teach her manners. The students begin to mutter as they see Dry getting upset against the newly awakened one. King silently berates himself for getting into trouble the moment he decided to stay off the radar. Seek has been throwing fire at him since he confronted Erwin during the test. The students look at him with pity eyes now that he has earned the enmity of the elites. Especially after I know that he is bent on punishing him for his insolence against Prince Erwin. I know he's telling you that he's not in your humble village, so you'd better show some manners. He should not harass the maids at the academy, and must abide by the rules at all times. He's nobody, so he shouldn't act like one. To remind him of their difference in status, he shows him the brooch, which means that he is one of the elites, while Kim is not. He may have managed to earn a drop of noble blood, but he is still a nobody compared to them. He then grabs Kim by the neck and reiterates that he is nothing but a dirty blood. The high blood are the descendants of the ancient noble houses. Their powers awaken in childhood, and they already have noble status when they enter the academy, and the drop of blood proves their rank. Every year, newly awakened aspirants join them, eager to master their strength. However, those students are marked as belonging to the place of a dirty blood. To appease the man in front of him, he apologizes and states that he knows his place, and did not intend to offend anyone with his actions. While he is explaining, he is surprised to receive a beating from I know that, who is offended when he speaks without his permission. Apologizes again like an obedient sheep, begging to be forgiven. Still annoyed with him, I know it reminds him that he should use that as a lesson. However, He notices that his face has no trace of the blow he dealt him. Kim is doomed the moment the man notices it. Since he protected himself with a thin layer of electricity, he caprices his hand in anger, insulted that Kim keeps bumping into him and provoking him. Kim really doesn't want any trouble, and just acted out of pure reflex to protect herself from an assault. Angry, I know he decides to teach him a proper lesson by throwing him across the room with nothing but his sheer strength. This leaves Kim no other choice, forcing him to finally decide to fight. However, he still cannot release all his power. Suddenly, I know that it charges against him, producing electric rays and sending them towards him. This immediately inflicts great damage on King, injuring him. Since he needs to win the fight, he decides to use more power, releasing additional electrical charge to block his opponent's impending attack. However, this still turns out to be insufficient, since I know that he continues to overcome it. The noble blood smiles at his misery, mocking him for being nothing more than that and clearly having no chance against him. It sends more electric rays in Kim's direction, injuring the boy even more. He can't believe I know I'm so much stronger than him. The noble blood comes up to him and praises him for lasting so long. However, he intends to end the fight now and make it a lesson for all freshmen to watch and learn. All the freshmen are frozen in place when I know he's continuously beating the crap out of Kim. He is being slowly drained and starts to feel like he is dying. Relentless, I know he tells the students to keep watching as long as he turns the insect into his punching bag. I know he's laughing threateningly, saying he's not done torturing Kim yet, who is restrained by the chains. Almost at the limit, he thinks that he will be killed right there, regretting that he overestimated himself. He berates himself for wasting his second chance, while feeling that his body can't take any more blows. When he is about to close his eyes, he sees his sister running towards him. He apologizes to her in his head, as he can no longer get up from the injuries he suffered after the beating. He remains lying on the ground, while she prepares to continue hitting him. Medi begs the boy to stop hurting his brother. Through her tears, she begs him to stop, not wanting the boy to be hurt by his mistake. I know he's smiling, saying she should be beaten up instead if she insists. He then grabs her with the intention of giving her a lesson, saying that today is her lucky day. Medi screams as she is swept away by the noble blood. Whoever begs him, makes him not to take the girl, but his consciousness is slowly fading. He once abandoned May due to his blind thirst for revenge, and because of that, she was unable to move on with her life. He won't let that happen again, but the face of that one looking at him, like he's telling him he failed again. Kim wakes up from her nightmare, screaming. He is in the infirmary with bandages around his body after his fight with Dry. Sin is there, taking care of him, and Kim immediately asks for Mady. However, the man does not respond, still maintaining a vow of silence. Just then, another man speaks next to her, checking her condition. He is surprised to see Silas, but he puts aside his anger and asks about his sister first. Silas tells her that she came back that morning, but based on her face, I know that he had been playing with her all night. Who clenches his fist, his anger palpable towards the noble bloods, who all believe that the law does not apply to them. Silas tells him that he owes his life to the maid, but when he turns to Kim, the boy is already lost and blinded by pure rage. After hearing that his sister was injured,